Hello, welcome to my video. AskReddit. People who work in law enforcement. What is work like right now? Facebook friend is a cop. They gave him 24 hours off yesterday. Before that he put in 100 hours in 7 days. He pretty much slept through his day off. Yep, my brother's a cop. Has worked 20+ hour days in the past week. On the job 8 years, 5 in my current place, 3 as a detective. Work is fine. Our local communities went out and protested. We were out there to support them. We didn't have any rioting or looting. I wish all places could say the same. Thanks for not whacking anybody in the face with a riot shield like the St. Louis Metro Police did to me. I was just standing there on the sidewalk. For context, where I'm at there's been plenty of protests and I've not had a day off in over a week now. But honestly the protesters here have been respectful, well-mannered, and honestly a great representation of how things should be. I've had great conversations with them, and think some good came of it. Sure, I had 1 or 2 get in my face screaming and such, but it really didn't bother me cause of the above paragraph. I'd say, from my experience, most people aren't anti-cop-piracy. They are anti-excessive force and violation of rights. And I'm with them. Protest the shit out of it. There is a need for change, and I'm ready for it. Help me get these new cludriggers out, so we can all have better days. You know what would be better than people protesting? Good cops such as yourself outing, or arresting the bad ones. That blue wall of silence is a motherfucker though, huh? That's exactly what it will take. I've never shied away from calling other cops on their crap or reporting it. I've arrested a cop before, and I'll do it again. I feel that blue line stuff was cool at first, but somehow it's warped some cops' minds that we have to protect our careers over the public. To me that's whack. I'm 100% for transparency and reform if it makes the world a better place. And I'm very open to discussing opinions on how to improve policing. I wonder how many are considering new career paths. I was considering becoming a policeman as a backup plan. Having studied systemic racism, cop culture and multiple flaws of the police system for the past year, I was confident the awareness brought by my university program would allow those who would join the police to be better than the current ones. However, I'm kinda worried about the social etiquette that'll come with joining the ranks now. Good thing it's a backup plan, I guess. My cousin is in an outer suburb of Minneapolis and he just became a cop. He said Friday night, when the protests and riots were happening, when he worked, was the hardest night of his life. The chief officer said he hadn't seen anything like this in the past 18 years he served there. A friend of mine is in the army, and she said she's been on active duty this entire time and it's been super long for her. I witnessed the effects of the riots firsthand and it's crazy. I don't think the city has ever seen something like this in most people's lifetimes. Maybe in the past, but not the current generations. My dad grew up in Minneapolis, not far from where Floyd was murdered, and he says that there wasn't anything like this in the 60s there. From a relative whose husband works for the Secret Service at the White House. My husband was on the front lines of the recent White House protest. It was a long night for me, but it was a much longer night for many others. We see the burning buildings, the broken glass. We hear about the tear gas and barricades. What we don't hear and see is this. This is what my husband remembers most. He remembers the bridge makers. The people there that are angry, hurt and in pain, but they build a bridge anyway. The people that are scared, tired, and struggling but build a bridge anyway. They see the way through this as peaceful and hopeful. He told me of a black woman whose face is frozen in his mind. She stood between him and a swarming group of people who wish death, violence and all other kinds of things upon him. Shouting back at him she said, "I got you." Shouting to the protesters she said, "This isn't the way." These voices are being drowned out, but I believe these voices are the ones who will not just change minds but change hearts. I have no judgment to pass, because I can't understand, but I want people to know that mixed with the sad, terrible, and ugly there is hope. There are bridges. Cop for 25 years. Firearms instructor for about 20. Field training officer for over 12. About 70 cops total passed through my training car. Been in investigations for about a year now. Grateful for the level-headed, generally laid-back county I live and work in. I would say we are diverse, but admittedly the majority of that diversity is a very strong Hispanic population. Our citizens, and I include cops in that category, are outraged by what they see and rightfully want to voice that. Toward us, people are supportive and understanding and at the same time sad, as am I. I have Gen Z teenagers that are with me every other weekend. The weekend after Mr. George was killed, my sons asked what I thought and what I'd have done if I saw that happening while off duty. I explained without hesitation that I'd have done what I've always preached, put a bully in his place. I swear I've answered the "why are you getting into law enforcement" question with that countless times. I'd have badged my way close to where those bullies were killing that man and laid the one on his neck the fuck out before the rest had time to react. I'm not the baddest man on the planet, but I'm not small and I've been around. If I'd have caught a beating or trouble with my department for acting my mind, so be it. Wouldn't be the first time. Defense of the life of another. That's like lesson fucking 1 for fuck's sake. I will say, FWIW, I've worked hand in hand with a couple thousand cops throughout my time and I've never firsthand seen the things I'm seeing these fuckheads do. They don't deserve the badge or the position of public trust it represents. So how's work up? I love my current job and my overall career. I'm grateful the lessons I've learned and the chance to, literally, save a few lives. I work with an amazing contingent of like-minded individuals that would lay down their lives in the defense of others. All that said, I can't help but feel the blight of shame that these pretenders have put on us. If by some weird Spider-Verse dimensional shift I found myself working next to some of the asshole bullies I've seen videos of, pretty sure I'd be on suspension for putting them in their place. All I can do is be honest with my sons and community members who value my opinion. Train new deputies to listen to people and be creative in their problem solving, and explain to them that may come with bearing your soul every now and then. I've always stressed teaching knowing when to fight, but more importantly knowing when not to, and if things do go south, knowing when it's done. I will continue to treat people with the respect they deserve and help people through tough times because their tough times are peppered sporadically through their lifetimes. But I've been part of people's tough times for 2.5 decades. I chose this mantle willingly. I've been a cop almost my entire adult life, but I was still a caring human first. And that's no different than most anyone else. I wish there were a million more like you. Thanks for your service. You truly understand what that word means. My friend is a firefighter near a major city having riots. This Saturday night, they received multiple calls for dumpster fires, would respond, and instead of finding a fire would be pelted with bricks and such. This happened so many times, they stopped responding to anything but building fires to at least attempt to stay safe. They tried to help people and were punished for it. I understand the anger, but that was not a productive channel for it. I understand people are mad at police, but it's not all of them. And what did firefighters do to all of a sudden deserve anything? Who knows? There's a lot of misdirected anger as well as people just taking advantage of a bad situation to do bad things. Looters for example. It's exhausting and depressing. I can't go an hour without someone flipping me off or screaming "fuck the police." I'm just as upset about the murder of George Floyd and police brutality in general as anyone else. I wanted to be a cop, to make a positive difference in my community. I work for an incredible agency that hires high caliber folks, and I've never once seen any of my coworkers do their jobs with any malice of hatred toward anyone. I just want to be happy to go to work again. I'm a police officer in a town in the middle of England. It feels pretty detached from what's happening in America, or even what's happening in London. We had protests over Saturday and Sunday, but there was very little overt police presence in what I think was a deliberate act by our chief constable. As an organization we've more or less said that we stand beside the protesters, but we will have to take action if there is violence. In the UK we police by consent, so the police need to imbue a sense of trust in what they do, otherwise it wouldn't work. There's always a small minority in any protest that appears to only be there to cause problems, or is looking for a fight with the police, or with other protesters, but by and large the vast majority of protesters, where I'm seem to be there for the right reasons. Work for me has more or less carried on as normal up to this point, but if the UK is put through a second wave of COVID-19, and there is still civil unrest around the BLM movement, I think we might start struggling to police the way we have been. American living in England for the past 5 years here. Thanks for your comment. I've been wondering what UK cops thought about what's going on in my country. I love the way policing is done here. Yes, there are bad cops here too, but the whole policing by consent practice makes people here feel much more like the police are a force for good. I was really struck when I started living here by how English cops seem to approach situations. Calm, working intelligently and rationally. I'm so used to seeing cops behave like raging bullies in the USA that the difference was amazing. My first month here, a man was acting up in the parking lot of a grocery store. Seemed drunk/drugged out, maybe mentally ill, maybe all of those things. He was yelling at people, throwing things around. The cops came. I braced myself for what I've seen happen in the USA more often than not. Guns drawn, screaming, throw the guy on the ground, hit him a few times, cuff, throw him in the cruiser. But the English cops who showed up actually took some time to talk the guy down, explained calmly why people were freaked out by his behavior, and offered him some options about what could happen next. They could take him to a hospital to get a psych eval, or they could call a relative, etc. One of them went into the store and bought the guy a bottle of water and a sack of Wotsits. I was blown away. The guy calmed down, decided he probably needed the psych eval, and went with them happily enough. It's one of the biggest differences living here. When I see cops in my rear view, I don't tense up. Anyway, thanks. We had a terrorist ambushed our sheriffs yesterday. One of the officers died. A young man with his second child due next week. That on top of protests, covered ordinance upkeep. My friends in law enforcement are having a hard time. I work in a smaller police department in NJ. We have a protest this week and the department is walking with the protesters. Surrounding departments have had their protests and all were peaceful. In the US there is a divide in how police are held to certain standards. There are small to mid-size municipal departments with a relatively decent town population. The pay is high and the standards are higher in the job. If you fuck up it's your butt. We get a lot of mandatory training with more that gets piled on every year, especially de-escalation and dealing with mentally unstable persons. I work in this area and am typically looked down upon by the bottom departments I'm about to describe because we aren't real cops and our job is too easy. City departments and those large sheriff departments in the south are usually the places with the problems. There are a lot of cops to be accounted for, and corruption is usually citywide going all the way to the mayor sometimes. In a lot of respects, HBO's The Wire is a very accurate representation of most, not all, cities. The pay is usually not as good and the hours are worse. It's also a lot easier to get hired into these jobs, so the candidate pool is naturally shittier. State police are busy sucking their own dick and can do no wrong, no one likes them. Joking. I work in a somewhat rural and tourist-driven area. My department has a good reputation and strong community support, which is nice. We have had peaceful protests that were attended by local department leaders and no rioting. I have noticed people being more emboldened, for lack of a better word, trying to butt in to legitimate law enforcement business, yelling, videoing, and making the situation much more tense than it needs to be and take far longer than it should, which not only impacts officers, but also the people we interact with who were perfectly fine before an uninvolved person felt the need to escalate the situation for no reason. The shitty part is the unknown. I'm entering my 9th year. I'm proud of what I do. I have never had a sustained complaint of any type, never had an excessive force complaint. I'm not perfect, because I'm human, but everything I do at work is above board. If I wouldn't bet my job that the violation I saw occurred, or the person I arrest did the crime, then I don't do it. I'll catch the next one. Now I have to worry about some anarchist setting my house on fire with my kids inside because my patrol car is parked there. That's bullshit, and it has already happened to an officer in Jacksonville, Florida this week when his patrol car was torched right in front of his home while his family was sleeping inside. This movement is going to have the opposite effect that it claims to want. Good cops are going to decide it isn't worth it anymore, and the bad, corrupt and totally stupid ones will be all that's left to hire. I teach at the local police academy, and it was very hard to get qualified candidates before this started. The standards have been continually lowered since I started, and I expect it to continue. I'm one of those people who decided not to become a cop years and years ago cause I don't like what a lot of cops do. The system is rotten from the top down. Sure, there might be some good cops like you, but you are a cog in a corrupted wheel of a system. If the standards of policing were actually largely raised and police were properly held accountable when they did things wrong, normal good people would be more interested in signing up. Most normal good people, like myself, take a look at policing and say fuck that. I don't want to work in a system that actively hurts a lot of people it swears to protect. Just graduated the academy very recently. So great timing as always. I joined to help people, but people hate me a lot more now, so it's interesting. I work for a good department that's on top of things, but change and reform can be a good thing, or bad if it's done just for approval ratings of politicians. Mostly I'm tired, trying to learn everything but not being able to escape from it. It's everything going on. The constant all cops are bastards is weird. I don't think I'm a bastard. But who does? You have a different perspective on certain things, but obviously excessive use of force is disgusting. I have yet to see overt racism, but knowing it exists, and to be vigilant that it can cloud your judgment if you're not careful is a valuable reminder. The qualified immunity thing is kinda terrifying. We're already at risk, being civilly liable for egregious mistakes, but being civilly liable for anything someone doesn't like. Parts of the job are going to make people mad. We respond to the worst time of people's lives and people hate us. I think it's too big of a risk to be in the profession if that happens. Also, don't defund police departments. You'll get worse candidates and it'll be just like No Child Left Behind. I'm new, so what the hell do I know though? I don't mind the hate. I support the protests, but it's kinda surreal doing something that I'm proud of and being called the Gestapo. Like I read all cops should be ashamed of themselves and quit. I don't know how to take that. I'll keep on trucking for now. I kinda feel like Spider-Man. The media hates us, people hate us, we are underpaid and overworked, and we still kinda just do it. That's what I tell myself anyway. Thanks for watching. Subscribe and hit the bell for more content.